Good evening and welcome everyone. We're back for another At the Virtual Table. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Joe Biden presidency and what the election means for Illinois. But first, before we get to our packed show, I want to share a special offer, especially coming from the Sun-Times. We've amped up our digital offerings to bring it all to you wherever you are. You can get the Sun-Times e-paper. That's our daily digital replica of the print product, which lives at paper.suntimes.com. It's a special digital offer that gives you unlimited access to both the e-paper and to every story at suntimes.com for only $2.49 a month. Get that, $2.49 a month. You can't beat it. You can learn more and subscribe after the show. Stay with us, but then subscribe immediately after the show at suntimes.com/subscribe. It's going to help keep you informed about our essential political and coronavirus coverage. And please also consider subscribing for our podcasts at the URLs on your screen. And now I'd like to hand it off to Lynn Sweet, my co-host for At the Virtual Table.
Hi,
Lynn?
everybody. Hi, thanks for joining us. Let me just tell you, we have a packed night tonight. Let me introduce you to everybody on the screen right now. Jim Durkin, the Illinois Republican leader, one of the top Republicans in the state of Illinois. Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, the Democrat from Evanston. Karen Yarbrough, who is the Cook County Clerk, and two other hats. She's a member of the State Central Committee of the Democrats and a DNC member. And we have joining us later in the show, two people from the Sun-Times, our political writer, Rachel Hinton, and Marlen Garcia. Marlen and Rachel, we'll see you in a little bit, but I'm going to start with now Amy Walter. Amy is going to join us for the first segment. Amy is the national editor of the Cook Political Report. She's a good friend of mine, but here's what's important and why she's joining us at the Chicago Sun-Times. Amy is a graduate of Barrington High School. So when we talk about national Illinois politics, Amy knows what she's talking about. So Amy, let me kick it off with you here, and I know you don't have a lot of time. Thanks for being here. Right now, Trump is ramping up his efforts to try to overturn the election results right now. Do you see this more as a legitimate effort to change the outcome and somehow claim a second term, or is he just trying to delegitimize Biden in the eyes of a lot of Americans who voted for Trump? What do you think?
First of all, hi, Lynn, and hi to the rest of the panel. I wish I could stay, but alas, it's a school night, and school issues are things that I'm dealing with right now, but in a good way. And also, Barrington High School, hated playing Evanston, but we beat you sometimes, usually not that often, but sometimes, every once in a while we would, and
Amy, by the way, is a terrific athlete. We play on a softball team together, and I'm just like a mope, but she is.
No. That was I learned it all. I learned it all there at the Barrington High School fields. Look, Lynn, we knew some of this was coming all along. In fact, we knew so much about this election was going to play out this way. And I think that the media and secretaries of state across the country, boards of elections, others who are responsible for monitoring elections, were very transparent and very upfront about the fact that not only were a lot of people going to be voting absentee or early, a lot more than we'd ever seen before, but in many of these states, it meant that votes were going to come and be processed in different timeframes, that people who voted early or absentee in places like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, their votes were going to get counted and added to the pile later, and that the election night votes were going to be more Republican. So we knew this was coming. We also knew that the president from the very beginning tried to delegitimize this process, saying that absentee votes are rife with fraud, that mail-in votes are a problem, that they're trying to rig this election. So we've kind of played to this part. And quite frankly, I think a lot of us were hoping that it wouldn't actually come to be, that there would be a place where it would either, maybe it would give an election night where it would be obvious which states went which way, or that the margins would be so large that there'd be no contest whatsoever about any of these states. Instead, we're basically where many people thought we were going to be, which is a president who is saying that the process is still illegitimate and that there is occasion not necessarily to be looking at fraud, but that the process itself and the laws that have been followed or written or maybe interpreted by secretaries of state and election officials, those need to be reevaluated and put in front of the courts. But the reality, Lynn, is that there's no merit to any of this. And what I worry about is something that I've been worrying about for quite some time. And it's not just with the Trump administration, it's been building for years, which is the delegitimization of so many institutions around us. And you know, the wonderful thing about this country is how incredibly resilient we are, how optimistic we are. We bounce back from things, but we always have these guardrails around us. And once the guardrails are gone, we don't really know what's on the other side, or actually I get very nervous about what's on the other side. And so, you know, we know after the 2000 election, for example, you had so many Democrats who felt as if the election were stolen from Al Gore, that the Supreme Court overstepped, that, you know, we know that there were conspiracy theories in 2004 as well from Democrats about John Kerry losing Ohio by so few votes. But that was a process that was not legitimized by leaders of the parties. And you had both John Kerry and Al Gore concede the election. And that's not only not what's happening here, but is in the process really, truly doing damage. The fact that the president is now apparently talking to members of the Michigan legislature, bringing them into the White House to talk about potentially putting a new slate of electors and overturning the will of the people. I mean, it's comical in the sense that it's so inept right now, but it's not funny.
Well, so Amy, what if he doesn't? The president never concedes.
Yeah,
I understand your concerns about the legitimacy issues and the trust issues, but does it really matter in the end?
No, he will never concede. We've known that from the very beginning, that he wasn't going to concede. What we didn't expect was that they were going to continue to play this out in the way that we've seen, whether in the courts or now with this Michigan situation. So him not conceding, you're right. No, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that the president has to concede, or he just has to leave on January 20th.
Will he? Well, we have to be dragged out.
No, I think that's going to be the case, but he's setting the stage. Again, it's fine for his supporters to believe that this was not a fair or accurate or above board election. But if that turns into something that now we have huge swaths of the population that believe that the process itself can never be trusted.
Well, let me jump in. This is my question to you. Is election denial going to be the new birtherism?
Maybe. I mean, we'll see how long here's the question, is how long this is going to last and dig in. I mean, if we've learned anything from this election, it is we are an incredibly divided country. That's no surprise. What's been interesting, though, is where these dividing lines are now. And more, they're dividing lines not on, you know, this is not North versus South, East versus West. It's a density is our new dividing line. And so the more populated your region that you live in, the more likely it is to be Democrat, and the less populated, the more likely it is to be Republican. And now basically what we're looking at, and you know, this was building over time. This isn't new to have rural areas that are moving to Republican and suburban, especially inner suburban areas, moving Democrat. What's different is, I mean, I remember looking back at the 2006 elections, Lynn, you know, when the thought was that, you know, that's when Pete Roscom was in that very competitive race, and what was then that Park Ridge district running against Tammy Duckworth. She came up short there. Democrats came up short in a lot of suburban districts in Connecticut, in the Philadelphia suburbs. And in 2018, not only did all those suburbs flip, but so did ones in Dallas and Houston and Orange County. Atlanta. And so what we're seeing now is sort of a nationalization of the suburbs, and a nationalization of rural areas. And that, there was a time, Lynn, wasn't that long ago, where there were 2 Democrats representing North Dakota. That's not going to happen again. And you're also never going to get another Republican representing the inner suburbs around Chicago. And at this point, I don't know if you're going to get one even in the outer suburbs of Chicago.
Well, we did get a little redder than I thought, but let me jump to this, since I know we only have you a few more minutes. Tomorrow, President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris are going to meet with Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer. Amy, where is it going to go with McConnell, the Senate Republican leader, where I saw an interview that Ron Klain did with Pulitzer earlier today. They haven't talked yet. What's the strategy, do you think, here for getting a Senate that will work with you, or does everything have to wait until the January 5th Georgia runoff elections to see who controls the Senate?
I think there are 2 things that need to happen. One, you're exactly right. Who controls the Senate after Georgia is going to be the big issue. And the other is, just as this process is dragging out with the president and his legal team and these lawsuits and all this other stuff that we're hearing coming out of Michigan, et cetera, while Biden has decried it and said that it is, inappropriate, he's also not, he's not spending a lot of time focused on this. He's not trying to sort of inflame this issue more than it already is. And so to me, what that is sort of saying to McConnell is, look, we're not going to play this game of I'm going to get my base all fired up and you keep yours all fired up. But I think, look, I appreciate the focus right now on Biden in his time in the Senate and how much work he did in reaching across the aisle and building consensus. But we also know that the Senate looks a lot different than it did even in 2009. There were a lot more moderate Democrats from red states. There were more Republicans from blue states. There's only one true blue state Republican left, and that's Susan Collins from Maine. You have Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, which are sort of purple, I would argue, especially after this election. And everything else is, every other senator is from a red state. Many of them are trying to run for president in 2024. And so, it is going to be a very different kind of place to try to negotiate. And at the same time, you also saw this today too on the Hill, Lynn, with activists on the left saying Joe Biden needs to move a lot more quickly and a lot more decisively on some of these key issues like climate. I think we're going to see, a real push on who Biden selects for his cabinet, the kinds of people that he puts around him in office, in his inner circle. So this isn't just a, Republican Democrat. There's also an intra-Democratic. I don't know if I'm going to call it a rift or a battle, but certainly there is going to be a tension there. And you've got people who've been doing this for a long time. Pelosi, this is her second run now of having a Democratic president and a Democratic House. Now, she would love to, of course, have a Democratic Senate on top of all of that. But I think, they are much more realistic about what's in front of them. Again, what I think is even more important, Lynn, is to see just how divided the country is, not just on, I call myself blue or I call myself red, but when you see the percentage of Americans who said that, if the other guy wins, that person is going to do lasting damage to the country. If the other person wins, I think they aren't going to represent core American values. You saw there's a poll that came out in late October from PRRI, which asked Democrats or Republicans to to look at some statements and say whether they believe those were true or not. And you had overwhelming majorities of Democrats who believe that Republicans have been taken over by racists, and Republicans who think the Democratic Party has been taken over by socialists. So this isn't just like, we're going to go do a bipartisan infrastructure bill and it's all going to get fixed, or we're going to do a bipartisan stimulus bill and all of the divisions will miraculously go away. These are like big existential differences. And those are a lot more complicated. And remember, you have members who are coming in now who represent those feelings.
All a difficult and deeply divided
Yes.
Congress. Amy, I know we're out of time with you. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully,
Great to see you.
on another edition sometime. Come visit us anytime. Anyway.
I would love to.
Thanks for being with us, Amy.
Thanks so
Take care.
much. Bye.
Now, let me reintroduce everybody, because now we have Jim Durkin, the Illinois House Republican leader. Representative Jan Schakowsky, Democrat. Karen Yarbrough, Cook County Clerk, member Democratic Party of the state of Illinois and a DNC chairman. But Leader Durkin, I want to start with you. I was listening to your press conference today. So everyone who's out there listening, this is a huge day in the life of State House Speaker Mike Madigan. So before we get to that, and we're going to get to that because we have to be on top of the news, at the very end of the press conference, one of your colleagues, Leader Durkin, was asked, would you urge President Trump to concede? And your press conference ended and you didn't get to answer, or maybe whatever, but I'm going to follow up now. So can we just start out and figure out where you are? Will
Sure.
you urge
Very
President
simple.
Trump to concede?
The election's over, begin the transition process.
So he should concede.
The election, the people have spoken in this country. I hope that the president understands that there's no avenue for him to be able to overturn these results. And we are at a point in time in which there needs to be a cooling off period and a transition of power to the president-elect.
Well, so we have some news here, because as you know, very few Illinois Republicans, you and Adam Kinzinger are among the two that have said it. So it is very clear. Leader Durkin is saying that President-elect Biden will be the next president.
That's correct.
Okay, so how hard is it, Leader Durkin, for other Republicans to come to this conclusion?
You know what, that's up to them. I'm not going to speak for, it's a regional type of analysis, as we do with many things in the state of Illinois as elected officials. I'm speaking for myself, but I'm also, I'm a pragmatic Republican. And I believe that, that there are winners and losers in every election. You may not like the outcome, but the fact is you've got to move on. So that's my position.
What do you mean by regional analysis that you're saying?
Southern Illinois,
Regional...
we have President Trump, we went through a very interesting election cycle in the House of Representatives, where President Trump, where I live in the west suburbs, doesn't exactly play well. But in parts of Central Illinois and Southern Illinois, President Trump is very strong and people feel very emotional about him. My interest is the Illinois Republican Party and particularly the House of Representatives, of where I am the minority leader. And but I feel that we're at a time where we can move on and move on not only with the White House, but also we're at a point where we're probably going to move on in the Illinois House of Representatives pretty soon too.
Speaking of the House of Representatives in Illinois, as Lynn noted earlier, there was some breaking news over the last couple of days around House Speaker Mike Madigan. As we all know, there have been a series of indictments that came down yesterday that may directly involve him. There have been many calls, sort of almost burgeoning calls from some members of his caucus asking him to step down as House Speaker. And I just want to bring Jan Schakowsky and Karen Yarbrough in on this one, and to ask, starting with you, Jan, for your reaction to the latest news, and what is your position on you don't have a vote in the House, but you certainly are a very influential person in the Democratic Party in Illinois. What is your view on this?
Well, a number of the state legislators, state House members in my area have actually called for him to Mike Madigan to step down. I think that regardless of whether or not he's involved in the indictments that have come down, there are a growing number of his members he has to get 60 votes in order to maintain his speakership. And particularly in the suburban areas, and some places in Chicago too, for sure, there are people now coming out and saying no. Now, as a politician myself, I always like to say that you can't beat someone with no one. And we haven't seen anybody step forward. Maybe that happens organically when it looks like he's really not going to have the 60 votes. But I guess there is one candidate who has said that she would run against him. So, I think that it may be time.
Do you think he should step down?
Yes, let's get this in a whole sentence, so Jen, to make sure everyone understands it. So the following,
I think for a number of reasons. I mean, I think one of the reasons, there was a lot of, I think, misinformation about the fair tax that was bad. But I think there was also the feeling that the question, do you trust Springfield, really had a lot to do with Mike Madigan and the controversies around him.
right,
And
but
so,
I want to just tidy this up to make crystal clear your position, even though you're right, you can't beat someone with no one, and there is no obvious successor right now. But could you just say it in a whole sentence?
I think the Democrats would be better off if Madigan would step down.
Hey, Lynn, I'll accept 15 Democrat votes to be Speaker of the House of Representatives right now.
I'm sorry, how many?
I'll accept 15 votes from Democrats in the House.
But I think, Jen, your point is also that he may not get the 60 votes. Madigan may not get the 60 votes, but someone else has to. And right now, there's no obvious successor, and that would be a really serious negotiating game going forward.
Right, but he can't. But Lauren, everybody, and Karen, you're not going to get off the hook here. So okay, just hold on, and then we'll also explain your T-shirt. But I think usually you kind of know who. Usually, I go by the can't beat someone with no one rule. But I think first of all, for some, you got to get. I see the ball starting to roll. That maybe we'll get somebody to emerge.
No, I mean, look, they're not going to go to Representative Durkin. I'm sorry. Very nice person, but that's not going to happen. And so I am sure that if it's realistic, that the votes just are slipping away from Mike Madigan, then I think that a really strong, or maybe more than one person will emerge. There could be more than one ballot in order to have an election with a different turnout, with a different outcome.
Well, no, a veteran is Springfield. Karen Yarbrough, what say you on the fate of Speaker Madigan? Should he continue? Say it in a simple declarative sentence so we could put it in the story. Thank you.
Turn on your mic, Karen.
You're on. You turned it off.
I want to dance. Okay, can I dance? All right.
Have you answered the question?
I want to dance just like Jan did. First of all, this is hypothetical, okay, and it's not a decision that I'm tasked with. Certainly, the sound of Speaker Durkin, I don't know about that, but I'm not there to do that. Let me just say no. I would not probably support not supporting the speaker if I were there. And I'll tell you
no,
what.
just to be clear, Karen, to be clear, you're saying you would not support
say it in
the speaker stepping down.
Yeah, don't step on yourself here. Say it in a clear sentence, please.
Yes.
Say it in a sentence so Rachel could put it in a story.
Rachel can put it in her story. I've already talked to Rachel about this. But with another hat that I don't, some of the things, the points that Jan brought up are just, right on. At the end of the day, it takes 60 votes. And I would venture to say, I don't know who's there now. I've been gone quite a while. But if any of you have ever tried herding cats, it's difficult. I can't even think of anyone, maybe one person, that could get 60 votes. And no, I'm not going to.
Who would that be? Who would that be?
And no, I'm not going to tell you who I think
that. Greg Harris's name has come up quite a bit.
Greg Harris is a moderate, and I've served with him, and he would be a person that people would gravitate to.
But right now you're not joining the call for Madigan. And why is it that you don't feel it's appropriate for him to step down at this point?
Because he doesn't want to. He just doesn't want to. I've asked him about years ago. I asked him about would he retire, and he said to me, "What would I do?" And I'm like, I don't know, but would people do retire and they do something, don't they? And he said, "This is my life. This is what I do. I do it well." And he does. Laura, he does do it well. I mean, when you look at a map of the United States and you see Illinois right in the middle of the United States and it's blue. And, when these other states have taken off and they wooed another lover, Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin and whomever, they turned red, and that was that. And so they've come back. Okay. In some cases anyway. So I just think he's really good at what he does. This whole thing, I've been accused of things that, just simply were not true. Okay. I don't know what this is. I'm going to, watch like everybody else is going to watch.
Some people know too, in your hat as a member of this, you're one of 36 people on the State Central Committee. Madigan has a few years left in his term. Your position on him staying as the head of the party, where we have Governor Pritzker and Senator Duckworth and Durbin that said he should quit as the party chief because he was a drag on the ticket. What do you
say? Oh my God. Okay. I could say plenty about that fair tax.
No, I don't want to go to fair tax. First I want to know your position on him staying, because otherwise we'll lead up.
Same deal. I'm not voting. You know what, that
you do vote
election, on. That election is not until I believe 2022.
I know. I said you got a few years, but
today, absolutely not.
Hey, Lynn, it's to the House Democrats' peril. We're going to continue on with this rejection of this. I would say it's to the peril of the House of Representatives, and particularly the House Democrats, if they're not going to come to the reality of the situation at hand. It should have been a very, very stark, wake-up call last summer with the filing of the deferred prosecution agreement, a criminal case against ComEd, where public official A is mentioned 72 times as being the beneficiary of a 9-year bribe scheme. And the indictment yesterday of the not only the ComEd executives, but the gatekeeper to Mike Madigan. It doesn't take a lot to connect the dots. We are held to a higher standard, and everyone knows that. And, you can say that he hasn't been charged with anything, but the fact is, if you put the DPA and also the indictment yesterday, you connect the dots on that. It is clear that with the 15 or 16 Democrats who now have broke rank, that it's going to get worse. So I think the speaker needs to cut bait at some point, and the legislature needs to move on. As I just said earlier about a smooth transition, it's a time to do it, not only in Washington, but also in Springfield in the House of Representatives.
Well, I would say that that's his choice if he wants to step down. I don't see it happen.
Hey, look, I'd love to have him hang around for another 2 years.
Yeah, and Karen, why is it his choice? I mean, he was elected by his peers, by his colleagues who do answer to voters. So why is it that it's his decision rather than his colleagues' decision? Well, on behalf of the voters.
Let me put it to you like this. Okay, he was elected in a district. I don't know what his number is, 20 something. And those people want him to represent them in Springfield. And then there are the people in Springfield who elect him as the speaker. And then there are people on the Central Committee who elect him as their leader. Now that's what's happened over the years, okay? The time will come again where he is up for speaker. That'll be coming up in January. And people will make a decision on which way they want to go.
We know that.
Yeah, so all of those things will happen. I will only be involved in one of those processes, and that'll come up in 2022.
Okay, but here we'll move on. But you and Jan and Jim, you're the influence leaders in the state. You're at the top of the pyramid. You're up there. What you say, Madigan could stay a member of the State Central Committee. Madigan could represent the people of his state rep district. He just doesn't have to be the leader. But let me slightly shift gears, and I want to weave together a state and local matter, and I want you all to jump in. Right now, we have a stalemate on the stimulus bill. We had an election that did yield a House majority. Jan, as you know, it's a little slimmer, but we don't know what's going to go on in the Senate. Leader Durkin, the Illinois Republicans objected strongly under President Trump to having any stimulus help cities and villages. The bill that the House passed, and it passed in May, included help for about 2,000 local governments in Illinois, including ones run by Republicans. With the change in the White House coming up, what is the position of the Illinois Republicans, of whom you're one of the leaders, in working with Democrats to get a deal here? We know President-elect Biden wants to include the city and state aid. That's been a stumbling block. How do you see this unfold?
Look, I think that a lot of it we talked about earlier is going to come down to what happens in Georgia, of what type of relief that's going to come back to the state of Illinois and every other state. I can't speak for Adam Kinzinger or Rodney Davis, but I do believe that there was some reluctance on Democrats to find a victory for the president in those last few months. That's just the reality of politics. I understand how that works. But there was, it kind of ties in with what's going on with our budget right now. The Democrats in the House passed a budget and the governor signed a budget that was about $5 billion out of balance. A little extra money has come in. So we're a little bit less than $4 billion, but it was premised then it would be budgeted based on another bailout from the federal government and also the passage of the fair tax. So that was irresponsible from the beginning. And we warned the governor and the Democrats that you should not be doing this because those are very, very speculative types of conditions that you have to rely upon. So look, I would imagine there is going to be some type of relief, and I'll let the Congresswoman describe that, but it seems to me that if you're going to have a split chamber between the House and the Senate, it may not be as robust as some people had hoped. There's a lot of money that's being spent. At some point, you got to, the debt continues to grow, and it's up to the negotiators in both chambers. But again, it's a lot of it depends on how things shake out in Washington with the chambers.
Dan Schakowsky, I think I saw you rolling your eyes a little bit there. I'd like to get you to respond to the Leader Durkin's comment that the Democrats were dragging their feet on stimulus because they didn't want the president to get a victory. And then where do you see things standing?
Well, first of all, that is absolutely not true. Nancy Pelosi was more than willing to bargain around the number, how much money we were going to spend, but it had to be spent in ways that really make sense. I don't quite understand the reluctance of the Republicans when it comes to state and local help. I just don't. They have got to be hearing the same calls that I'm getting from the Republican mayors in the towns in my district, the desperate need for revenue in places where the revenue coming in is down and the expenses are up because of dealing with the COVID virus. I can't understand the reluctance to make a deal, because if we are going to get our economy going, we have to do two things, and they go together. And that is, we have to crush this virus. And that's when we're going to be able to open ourselves for commerce. Instead, we're going absolutely in the other direction. Today, President-elect Biden and Kamala Harris met with the National Governors Association, not the National Democratic Governors Association or Republican. They met together. And he told them that there has to be a partnership with states and with the federal government. Right now, this president, not just right now, but for the last 4 years, the president has said things like, and Mitch McConnell too, let the states go bankrupt. What?
Right. So, if you hold your thought a minute. See, Jim, that's the point I was trying to get at. Do you think the Republicans are going to retool or recalibrate what had been just a hard position against the state and local government spending now? I mean, I know you're not going to address that.
No, I understand where you're going with that, Lynn, but I think it's consistent with what we've said. You can only spend money that you have. We're continuing to drive up debt in the state of Illinois and also the federal government. And there's going to be somebody's going to have to pay this bill. Inflation is going to get even stronger and stronger. And I've told the governor, and I've said that, it's horrible what's going on. We all understand that we are in a pandemic, but we have to be able to find the right balance, make sure that we maintain the health and safety of everyone that we know in the state of Illinois, but we can't crush our economy at the same time. It's a matter of negotiation. But when we get back to last May's budget, we're spending more money than what we can bring in. I don't believe in deficit spending to the extent that I've seen in Springfield and clearly in Washington.
You had some federal help, but let me just do for Karen and Jan and Jim, biggest impact the Joe Biden presidency will have on Illinois. Karen, then Jan.
Oh my goodness.
Keep it short. We're not doing the,
Okay,
we're not doing the documentary here.
Okay. I believe it's going to change everything. Certainly the tone, there'll be some respect, civility, compromise, professionalism, and our standing on the world stage.
But how Illinois? Give me an Illinois thing.
And what for Illinois?
Yeah.
He's a Democrat. He believes what I believe. He believes what Democrats believe. And I mean, just having somebody there that speaks your language makes all the sense in the world to me. But I just want to end this war that against Illinois, especially against Chicago. This back and forth with Chicago, with Lori Lightfoot and what have you. I mean, can we tone down the rhetoric? The rhetoric will be toned down, and maybe we can get something done.
Actually, that's a concrete change. Jan.
Schakowsky, what's your view? What's the biggest impact?
I have a very different view, not surprisingly, from Representative Durkin, Leader Durkin. We need to have relief for the American people. And that is the kind of thing that will promote spending in the economy. This idea that somehow an austerity budget is being called for now, or that we have to just deal with the debt, means that we are never going to crawl out of this. We need investment. We need to invest in our people. We need to invest in a infrastructure, a big infrastructure program that we can put millions of people to work, mostly in green jobs, in good jobs, in union jobs. And those are the things that are going to make our economy come back. But if we decide to skimp on this, if we decide, oh, the big problem is that we can't, spend any more money, we are never going to get out of the mess that we're in, and we're never going to really have a robust economy. That's going to be the difference. I think that the president-elect understands that we have to make necessary investments and not let Americans fall through the crack. After all, this is still the richest country in the world. And the fact that so many people are without food, that can't pay their rent, that have run out of unemployment insurance, think they're going to be put out on the street, and they may be. We cannot operate that way. And our businesses can't operate unless there's some confidence that we're going to do something about this virus. And that's going to cost money too.
Jan, is there a real specific Illinois thing that you think will be different with Biden right away that you could see? And then Jim, I will ask you that same.
Yes, I do think that there's going to be some money for state and local government. Okay. And that money will come to Chicago. And that means some money for schools, for healthcare. I mean, yes, I think it'll make a big difference.
Jim, what's your take?
I've seen it at the state level, at a micro level, of what irresponsible spending and driving debt is going to do to job creation and maintaining jobs. The blank check approach doesn't work. We can negotiate, we can find a way that's going to make sure that we can find safety for those who need help, but also maintain security, health and safety of people throughout the nation. It's just not saying throw more money at it. We've got to be able to be responsible. It's not our money, it's other people's money. And that's what I think people need to realize. But I'm going to get to what this presidency, what's important for this presidency. I want him to keep John Lausch as U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois.
Got it. Okay, thank you for bringing that up, because I did a story last week touching base with Senator Duckworth and Senator Durbin, and they want John Lausch to stay. It was actually they voted for him. He was a Trump appointee, but he had the support of the Democratic senators of Illinois. And Jim, you think that's important because of what continuity, keeping up the prosecution?
It is, and I think that John Lausch has been fair, and he's doing a good job, and he's committed towards what he's done with the gang crimes and taking a more aggressive role, the most aggressive role I've seen by a U.S. attorney against street gangs and firearms violations, but also what he's doing on corruption. I think that he's earned the right to serve another term.
Well, that's certainly something that's very important to Chicago, especially these days. I wanted to jump in with, because we have a slew of questions from the audience, and we always like to make sure we include them. And I want to go back to what might be different with the Biden-Harris administration. And I have two questions. One's from Ed Bannon, and he asked which Illinoisans might be likely to join the Biden-Harris administration. And Gloria LaBoyer asks, what do you think? Do you think that Rahm Emanuel might be tapped for a position? And if so, which position? Jan, you want to take that one, and maybe Karen can jump into it?
Certainly, there's been talk about having Rahm Emanuel at what is it?
Transportation.
And and there's already been some pushback on that from some Chicagoans, but the truth of the matter is that we do have many examples. I'm thinking of the Red Line in my district, that some major projects that Mayor Emanuel at the time had really pulled off. As you may recall, he had a big role in seeing that Ray LaHood, the Republican, became the Secretary of Transportation. But anyway, his name is up. He, I'm sure, will get serious consideration for that.
Would you support that appointment?
Well, I mean, I certainly think that he could do a lot for. I haven't seen any other names, but I think he could do a lot for our state and for our region. So this is a real possibility. I have not heard. Well, I did. Tammy Duckworth may be up for something else other than senator, which leaves an interesting vacancy that the governor would. I am discouraging anyone else in the House, Democrats in the House, from thinking about it because we have a slim margin. Now, you cannot appoint someone to the House of Representatives. You have to have a special election.
Right.
There's time that would diminish our majority even more if people went to the administration. So I'm kind of discouraging that. And
you don't want to see that your colleagues go to the White House because it's too important to hold on to your majority.
I do want to say one thing I am doing. I would like to. I would like to. I'm looking carefully at the regional positions. Hold on one second. Deborah Shore from the Metropolitan Reclamation District. I would like to see her as being the regional Environmental Protection Agency manager. That would be a great thing.
Know what Jan is talking about is the regions. It's a multi-state region, and
that's right.
The administrator who was there had been the Republican appointed and widely panned as the whole EPA. So this would be the multi-state. So again, so our listeners know there are people, regional administrators for EPA, for HUD, and various agencies. So that's an interesting.
Business administration. Yeah, there are a few that would be located in the region. Yeah, I mean, we've seen the hollowing out of the Environmental Protection Agency, and that's affected us.
Can I put in my 2 cents? By the way, my reporting has showed that Rahm is not in a top position to be a member of the Biden cabinet at this time, and that Senator Duckworth's name is in play. She has said that it would depend on the job. I believe she would be more interested in defense, less interested in Veterans Affairs. Anyway, she's up in 2 years on it. The one person who I think is really to watch is as famous as Rahm or Tammy, Sheila Nix. She came from the Obama-Biden White House. She was a chief of staff for then Second Lady Jill Biden. She's been involved in the campaign as a senior advisor. She's advising transition, and she would be probably somebody who would be in a top staff position if she wanted to. She works in Chicago and is a lifetime Chicagoan, so that would be someone to look for a top staff, but not cabinet position there. Who's the Republican who might join the Biden administration, Durkin? Who do you think?
No idea.
Okay.
It's not going to be Jim Durkin, I can tell you that. I'm
Karen,
taking myself out of the running already, Lynn, but I haven't paid attention to it. I don't know if you've noticed, but we've got a few things going on in the legislature for the last.
I know. If I have a quick question for the two Democrats here. Are the Democrats fractured right now in their disagreements over the, Jan, you told me once when we talked that the progressives get a bad rap on this, but is this a fractured inter-family fight we're having?
Way exaggerated right now. I think the fact is so clear that Joe Biden would not have won without the progressives, and he would not have won without the moderates and some of the Republicans who came over and voted our way. And so there's a lot of will. We've been having very smooth elections for leadership for the last 2 days. And it's over and over again, people are talking about how we need to be unified in order for us to be able to move an agenda. And that agenda that we call For the People, we've passed many of those bills already in the House of Representatives in this in this current Congress. And I think that we can't in any way overestimate a few things that have been said. It's just not going to happen that there's the kind of division that people have imagined.
Okay, some overrated. Joining us now in our discussion, Chicago Sun-Times political writer Rachel Hinton, and Marlen Garcia, Chicago Sun-Times deputy managing editor. So Laura and I want to know, and stick around, Jim Durkin, Jan Schakowsky, and Karen Yarbrough, but we want very sharp insights, takeaways from this election that you two have had as you've been studying the returns and the outcomes. Marlen, you go first.
Well, I think women who opposed Mike Madigan in the suburbs were winners, and the women who were wishy-washy lost to Republicans. You look at DuPage County, Tara Costa Howard, that was a Republican district. She took it in 2018. She's a Democrat. She won, and she's been very vocal about Mike Madigan. And then you look also in DuPage, Diane Pappas, not so, she was very wishy-washy. She was getting a lot of money from organizations tied to Madigan, and she lost to a late entry Republican, Seth Lewis. Mary Edley Allen in the, Jim Durkin will correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's Lake McHenry.
That's correct.
Right, she was wishy-washy and she lost. And Stava Murray, I might be saying her name incorrectly, but she's been opposed to Mike Madigan all along, and she won re-election. So it's really interesting because Michael Madigan.
The Metro East, which we won too, which were two women that we defeated. We defeated Nathan Wrights and also Monica Bristow, who was 100% with Mike Madigan, and so it's Nathan Wright. So those are 4 seats that we flipped.
But as far as the suburbs go, so Madigan has been crucial, right, in helping turn Trump was also crucial in helping the suburbs turn kind of purple or, go with the Democrats. And now though, to keep these seats, these Democrats have to turn on Madigan. So it's a fascinating thing, but as far as Madigan goes, watch what the unions do, because the unions, and this is Jim Durkin, you may disagree, I respect you, but Bruce Rauner made Madigan even stronger with his Democratic caucus, right? Because the unions bolstered. The unions bolstered
Madigan.
Madigan.
The fight against the public and also the private sector unions, which was a mistake. Traditionally we've had good relationships with building trades, and I've started rebuilding that relationship within the last 2 years, and I'm going to continue to do that.
All right. So it's interesting because, so the unions really like Madigan. He was very protective of them in the Rauner years, and so the unions are with Madigan, and we'll see what kind of arm twisting. I heard somebody use the word arm twisting today. The unions use for Mike Madigan.
They're at it right now. We know that the unions are now reaching out to the rank and file members of the House Democrats to get them back on the team.
Interesting.
So
Rachel.
Rachel, your take.
Yeah, I think I agree totally with what Marlen is saying. I would also add that trust and whether or not you can trust your legislators in Springfield was a big issue, and I think that was also on the ballot. I think that some of these races were kind of a referendum on Mike Madigan. We saw Justice Kilbride, I believe the first state Supreme Court is to lose retention. We saw him tied to Madigan as, Republicans or opponents of Kilbride, depicted him as Madigan's favorite judge, and now he's no longer on the Supreme Court. The same with, I believe her name is Judy Cates, another woman who ran for a Supreme Court seat, and she lost as well. I think that there was some connection to her and Madigan. I think maybe she donated to him at some point in time. So I think that Democrats really had to answer for not answering questions about Speaker Madigan in the past.
Can I say something, Rachel, that Betsy Dirksen-Londrigan had nothing to do with Mike Madigan, but they tied her, the ads tied her to him too.
And that's, we saw Senator Durbin come out the day after the election, the day after the election and say, Democrats paid a heavy price for Speaker Madigan being the chair of the state party. And I believe it was partly because of Betsy Dirksen-Londrigan as well as other Democrats who lost. And I think that we're continuing to see the fallout of that. And I think that is also partly why some of the Democrats who came out today, 3 or 4 people, I believe, came out today saying, we're not going to support the speaker for another term as Speaker of the House. The ramifications of that, as we've already talked about, that's going to be interesting to watch. You can't beat somebody with nobody, but it's interesting right now that Speaker Madigan currently does not have the votes, I believe, to continue to be Speaker of the House. I think he's 3 votes down. Stephanie Kipowit has thrown her hat into the ring. She doesn't have the money, the resources, the network that Michael Madigan has.
Is she a state rep?
He is a state rep.
From where?
She's already declared that she's going to run for speaker.
A little rusty. Okay.
Yeah. So she's thrown her hat in there. Who else comes out in the weeks and the months that we have left will be interesting to see, because Democrats in the House are either very vocal about opposition to Speaker Madigan, or they're very quiet. So this really opens up the playing field, I think, for some people to either feel comfortable coming out and voicing concerns about Speaker Madigan's leadership, or throw their hat or their support behind someone else, or to remain quiet in the hopes that they can just slink past this.
One of the things that we're talking about elections and results, a quick takeaway I have is that big turnout, early voting here to stay, mail voting here to stay. Clerk, now I'm putting you in your clerk's hat on, Karen. Can you show people the t-shirt, by the way, so everyone knows what you're doing?
Yes.
It says Kamala Harris's secret weapon are, I can't read it. Black woman vote. Yes, got it.
Yeah, that's who won the election. Women won, okay?
Okay, what did you see? Anything?
Well, let me start off by saying that we were, as far as registered voters are concerned, we have 1.6 million registered voters in suburban Cook County, and that's up from 1.3 million. There were 1.175 million ballots cast, and voter turnout was 70%. That's amazing. We broke a lot of records, More than 410 suburban residents voted early. That was an increase of 20%. And we had more than 457,000 ballots cast. That number's off the charts, okay? There's a record number of registered voters. A lot of times we put a lot of emphasis on people registering to vote more than, the people who are already registered, just go vote, but people came out and they did what they did. This was the first time that we actually had 12 languages on the ballot too. So that was great, in that there are many people, certainly up in the north suburbs and what have you, that speak different languages, and they were just so thrilled to see their language on the ballot. And I expect to see some of those folks run for office, and they're excited. They're really, really excited. We are just about through counting all of these ballots. We have a small number of provisional ballots to cast, and just a few thousand. And somebody mentioned it earlier about what happened on over the period. It's not election day anymore. It's more like election month. So, we encourage people to vote early. We encourage people to vote by mail. And guess what they did? They did that. And that's why we're seeing people like Lauren Underwood. I mean, she was feeling really, really concerned when she first looked at her numbers. And slowly but surely, these votes start coming in.
There's to be a recount. Oberweis is, so she's up at the end of, and she has no Cook County in her turf. She's up by 5,300 something with, these are unofficial totals, everybody who's listening.
Sure,
So
sure.
because it's so close, Oberweis can have what's called a discovery recount after
Yes.
the events are certified on December 4th, and he's going to pursue it. It doesn't mean anything changes. If he finds some evidence of something, he goes to a judge. But I just want to point out, when we're talking about trends here, I think the reason it's so close is that Donald Trump had coattails in that district, especially McHenry County. Okay, so
Yeah.
as much as this is a blue state, something happened in a trend. And I think that the Republicans, Jim Durkin, see it, and you're going to figure out a way to leverage it. And Jan, especially this close Underwood race, if Trump got involved at the very end, you see these margins of your majority there. Do you worry, any of you, a little bit about the Reading of Illinois?
Well, look,
Everybody jump in here. So Jan, go first.
I mean, Trump was on the ballot. That was the difference between the time we won 40 seats in 2018 and now. And he certainly, people voted with Donald Trump. This is a district, let's remember, that was Republican. Lauren flipped it. The seats that we won, when we won 40 seats, most of those were in Trump territory. And with Trump on the ballot, it became harder to maintain it. But he isn't on the ballot in Georgia, for example.
Yeah, well, we'll see. And what do you think is this has become a national race in Georgia right now. And there is so much at stake in this race.
It has become national. It has become.
Dan, let me spit out my question.
Sure, I'm sorry.
You got the answer, I know.
No, I don't.
How can the Biden presidency function if you have a Republican Senate, if the Republicans win those Senate seats?
Well, we've seen the current president of the United States, very prolifically using his authority to do executive orders of all sorts that I have seen one after another that has not only undone but damaging. And I honestly believe that some Republicans are going to come with us for the reason I said before. They're getting the same calls we are for jobs, for healthcare, for nutrition. I mean, so I'm hoping that we will be able to make progress.
Okay.
What do you think about that, Leader Durkin?
Well, I can't, what we saw this past election cycle is a little bit of everything. It was a rejection of Mike Madigan. The president did help us in certain areas. McHenry County, we did very well in. But we're going to be coming, in a couple of months, I'm going to have to start recruiting candidates for this midterm. And we are looking at this midterm the way that the minority party will look at it. We think that there's going to be opportunity. We think it'll be here in Illinois. It will be nationally. So, the party is going to go through a process, and I believe, as I said earlier, there will be a new administration shortly in, and Republicans are going to continue to have to be more inclusive, and that's what my responsibility is, because I believe in addition, not subtraction, and I spent $4.5 million on all our candidates. Mike Madigan spent $23 million and ended up still winning. So we have a message, we have a foundation to work from, and it's about the way the state has been run financially. And what are they getting? What are taxpayers getting out of their annual investment in the Department of Revenue? Really nothing to speak of, but also the way in which Mike Madigan his 40-year run has really, really gotten to people. And, you know, he's at the helm of every major decision and every disaster.
But we now invoke the rule, you can't beat someone with no one. So if you're going to be recruiting that, do you have someone for governor? Name some names. You have someone for Senate? Name some names.
No.
We're here, we're listening.
I have nobody.
Well, see, okay, we're kind of winding down, but I have a question. Everybody could jump in. Bite-sized politics is sometimes how I like to approach these mega issues we've talked about. So Biden wants to impose a national mask mandate. You're all people who are students of government. You all appreciate the process and procedures that President Trump did not. What is the best practice people could figure out to get to depoliticize mask wearing, to cool it down, get people when appropriate to wear it? I'm not even going into social distance yet. My God, I've seen some people at Jewel that just, I think they think that 6 feet, that 2 feet is the new 6 feet. And it's hard, but I want everybody of our newsmaker guests, and then Rachel and Marlen, if you have a good idea, how do we depoliticize wearing masks?
But let's be quick because we need to wrap up. Let's go right down the line. Let me start with Karen Yarbrough.
Oh my God.
Mask mandate or not?
Yes.
But
how do we make that work?
You know, it has been damaged so much by the president that this is not a political issue whatsoever. This is a healthcare issue.
How do you do it? How do you do it? How do you do it?
I don't know.
Okay.
Is that an answer? That's an answer. I'm just telling people to do it. Now, I just had an election where I had to make sure that my judges were safe so that we could have an election. They wore masks, and everybody who came in the polling place, they wore masks as well because we told them they had to.
You're the boss. No wonder. Jan,
That's right.
Jan.
how do you politicize?
You know, we passed the 250,000 dead people. Illinois is not doing well. Let's start with Illinois and try and do the kinds of things that show again how to bend this this curve. I don't know what to say to people who think that somehow it's about their freedom. It's about not hurting others. It's about, and there are some benefits to individuals who do wear a mask for themselves as well. I've never seen anything like this, but it's running out of control right now. We have to, and hopefully the vaccines will be available sooner rather than later. But if we don't do it, we're not going to crush this virus. We're not going to even make a dent. And I'm so afraid right now of Thanksgiving and the Hanukkah and Christmas holidays. I just don't know what we're going to see. People have to get some sense.
Leader Durkin, do you support a mask mandate, national mask mandate?
No, you can't enforce it. I support masks, I support social distancing and washing hands, but you just can't enforce it. It's a state issue. I'm not going to.
What about on the state level? Do you support it on the state level?
We haven't had one, and I've been working with the governor. I'm not going to. Again, it gets down to enforceability. We need more mitigation. I'm not going to. I think having trying to enforce something which is unenforceable, I think, is a waste of time.
Okay,
So we need to do better, and I think people, it's called common sense. Wear the damn mask. That's it.
And
Marlen?
There's a way of depoliticizing it. Leaders like just saying that message.
Yeah, both sides are guilty of it. Both sides are guilty of politicizing the issue of mask and also coronavirus. That's the way the DNC and the RNC operate.
Marlen,
that is not true.
That is true.
No, it is not true. The Democrats have, and that's how the Republicans like to think of it, that it's those Democrats, it's those elitist Democrats that wear masks. What?
So those progressive lefts who are just.
we'll give Marlen the last word on this.
Leader Durkin is correct. It is a state issue. Leadership matters. And so when Joe Biden becomes president in January, he'll wear a mask, he'll encourage it, and that will help. But President Trump has done too much damage. Too many people have died because of President Trump and his inaction and irresponsible actions. But you can't have a mask mandate, no.
Rachel, you're the very last word.
Point, because we're so far into this pandemic. It'd be different if, you know, in March or whenever we had one, or we had a president who wore the mask and really encouraged people to do so. But I think at this point, people have already picked their sides. People have chosen either they're going to wear a mask or they're not going to wear a mask. And I think that any mask mandate would continue to just divide the country.
Well, and that will be how our great experiment in the depoliticalization of masks, we'll see how that unfolds in the week ahead. So sorry to say we are at the end of our time together. We've had a very informative and in some ways newsworthy, we made some news on this show, discussion on our post-election edition here of At the Virtual Table. I want to thank Amy Walter from Cook Political Report, who started us out, who had to leave. Jim Durkin, the Illinois Republican House leader, and you carried a lot tonight, I know. With
Glad to do it. This is good.
I appreciate very much your being here. Jan Schakowsky, the Democratic representative, who's based in Evanston. Karen Yarbrough, triple hat wearer, Cook County Clerk, member of the Democratic Party of Illinois State Central Committee and a DNC member. And then our two Sun-Times experts on politics, Marlen Garcia and Rachel Hinton. Now, before we go, Laura tried to sell you some subscriptions in the beginning of the show, but I'm going to close it. Don't nobody go, okay? Because this is serious. You see what we do here. We do local journalism. We try and knit together the local, the state, and the national. We are here to serve you, but we need to sell some subscriptions to make this work. We have an e-paper. I love it. I read it every day in Washington when I can't see the real paper. There you see a replica of it. Why don't you buy it if you're not a paper subscriber? And I know we have people listening that aren't all from Chicago. We have a great deal for you. You could get this wonderful Sun-Times e-paper, which is the daily digital replica of that print product. It's at paper.suntimes.com, and we have a special offer. It's an offer just for you. You could get the e-paper and all this access to everything on the Sun-Times for only $2.49 a month. Talk about a stocking stuffer. Talk about a little Hanukkah gelt stuffer you could put in here. A little Thanksgiving joy while you're not going anywhere. You at least want a paper to read. So will you please just subscribe, support local journalism, and support the Sun-Times. So we'll be watching to see how our numbers come up, because we want to continue this and we need your support, our listener-sponsored support. My God, I think I just came out of some meeting at NPR and here. But you get my drift, everybody. Anyway, Laura Washington, the co-host, my partner here, thank you so much. And again,
thanks to everyone. Great show.
Maryland. More later, we will be back December 17th, right before the new Congress gets sworn in, and then hopefully we'll be back again when we have the inauguration. Until next time, this is At the Table.
Which